Alright, today's video is about a game I periodically check back in on, and that is Path of Exile. It's no secret I create a lot of content geared towards the discussion of unsavory industry practices, ranging from over-monetization of AAA $60 games to the downward slide of release day quality, but within that sort of gloomy overarching narrative, there are always bright spots. Path of Exile is probably one of the best examples ever of an evolving game that could potentially be described as a game as a service. Another example of success within that sort of framework would be Warframe. That's another one that people routinely talk about. And when I vocalize frustration with the games industry, and specifically the game as a service template, I should clarify that I'm specifically talking about these new age $60 games with disgustingly convoluted pre-order bundles that launch in a worse condition than the public restroom at a big city McDonald's. To be clear here, games like Anthem and Fallout 76, they're probably the best examples right now. Well, the argument can be made that Path of Exile has been out for many years, and subsequently has had more time to improve, a luxury not currently afforded by or awarded to games like Fallout 76 and or Anthem. Plus, there is a stark difference in gameplay style and subject matter, but the fundamental constant is that Path of Exile is free, and has had a continuous and upward trajectory for many years while providing enormous batches of free content like clockwork. This video is just as much an evaluation of the business model that has helped Path of Exile ascend to one of the most stable positions within the industry as it is an overview of the new league and content. But without further ado, let's get started with this review of Path of Exile and its Synthesis League. I've covered or played Path of Exile in some form or another for many years. At one point I took shots at IGN for a half-baked, used toilet paper level review that they wrote listing the game as a 7.2. It's actually 7.6, I misspoke in my recording, but whatever. While the main writer took over 70 hours just to get through the initial 10 story acts. And by the way, the initial 10 acts are essentially sort of like a tutorial for the rest of the game. There is so much content beyond that. Funny side note, actually, the community took and plugged his character stats into a building tool and found it would have taken him like 2+ hours of continuous combat just to kill the final boss. For reference, pretty much anyone out there with any level of competence at the game will kill the final boss in a matter of minutes. He then took his 70 hours of experience and figured, yeah, sure, I can review the game, and didn't even bother playing through the map system, discussing the ascendancies, or expanding on any of the highly developed and intricate systems at play, which give the game hundreds if not thousands of hours of replayability. But hey, he works for IGN. Anyways, this review, the one by the IGN hack, dropped mere days before the release of the Delve League as well, a procedurally generated system of mines which remains one of my favorite additions to the game, and now, most recently, they've introduced the synthesis mechanic, which allows players to progress through the memories of a character named Kavas, I think I'm pronouncing that properly, as they slot decaying map components into a nexus in order to create pathways to various different rewards. In the background right now, you're going to see a bunch of footage that I gathered using one of my new characters in the Synthesis League, which revolves around Frostbolt and Ice Nova. The Ice Novas fire off of the Frostbolts, creating a really cool interaction with really high damage, but be warned, this is early footage, and I was also in the process of converting this build and this character from a Bane Necromancer, because I had been testing out one of the new skills that just got introduced with this new league. Just figured I would throw that out there. This newest league, in semi-common fashion now for the game, incorporates the past mechanics into the world as well. The previous Betrayal Syndicate is back, the Delve Mines are fully operational, the bestiary of recipe-based gladiatorial fights is there, the Incursion Pyramid, and so much more. In fact, I would argue that Path of Exile is probably one of the only games out there that I've ever played where there is always more to do. You may have excess fuel and need to explore the Delve Mines, or turn in and complete various prophecies, explore a Syndicate stronghold, or build out your Atlas of Worlds with dozens of unique maps culminating in massive boss fights with the Shaper and the Elder. With the new Synthesis League, new items are also available, and on those new items, new stat rolls, but therein lies a bit of a problem that I see has begun to rear its head in recent months and years. Path of Exile has a power creep problem. Now when I say problem, it actually isn't a real problem just yet, but they are consistently creating more and more complex stat combinations which can rapidly accelerate to an out-of-control state. Grinding Gear Games, the developers behind the game, do an excellent job controlling balance, but the power creep is noticeable now more than ever, since the continuous need to empower players builds off of itself in an escalating way. The insane complexity of loot can also prove to be both a positive and a negative. When receiving hundreds, possibly even thousands of items in a very short period of time, it can be overwhelming, especially when a player does not have a customized loot filter, for example, or has no idea which stat rolls are valuable and which aren't, or how the currency orb system can be used to manipulate and craft gear. There's a whole bunch of different things that players may not know right off the bat, or not even really figure out for dozens, even hundreds of hours. It's pretty obvious that any loot-based game will never solve the riddle of making all the rewards feel useful. There will always be lots of bad or mediocre drops with some amazing things here and there. But in Path of Exile, this is an extreme case. For me personally, it's totally fine. I love sifting through gear and determining which stat combinations fit which build, but for a more casual-minded player who doesn't like that sort of thing, there is a definite learning curve. With the Synthesis League, the phenomenon is again escalated, since the new mechanic of synthesizing can award items that have new intrinsic stats that do not change when manipulating them. And with more stats layered dozens of levels deep, it not only creates more depth for experienced players, but can also raise the barrier of entry even more. Basically, this is a product of them raising the potential power level and then being forced to balance around that potential power, but a lot of newer players won't understand how to get to that power level because of the complexity in the gear and the rolls. So they have this balancing system that is becoming more stratified, and it's harder to realize the potential that you have, which can lead players to have this really, really high barrier of entry. Within the nexus of Cavus's memories, players are tasked with finding a pathway through various different nodes, and these different segments have unique modifiers and stats, as well as a set pathway orientation. To acquire these segments, players need to run through various decaying memories, which are present everywhere in the world, and stabilize them before the level fully decays and removes them from Cavus's mind. It is far from my favorite league ever, but it is unique and innovative to say the very least. With a new league like this comes new cosmetics and new supporter packs. As I already stated, and as most will know already, Path of Exile is completely free. But the way they provide these massive batches of new content every 3 months or so is by monetizing the cosmetic angle very heavily. This is where I have both praise and criticism of the game. For praise, this game is now my gold standard of how to make cool looking cosmetics. My god. Almost nowhere else in the entire gaming industry can I find a company or a game that gets even close to this level of success with visual cosmetic microtransactions, because they actually make you look fucking cool. All these games nowadays, especially the AAA ones, have garbage microtransactions. The trash in Anthem, where you can hardly even tell the difference between an $8 skin and the basic items. The bullshit in the original Division game. I don't have footage, unfortunately, but back when they introduced their cosmetics, there was a dark gray slouchy hat that was literally indistinguishable from a gray slouchy hat that you just find at like level 2 or something. Or Fallout 76, one of the biggest culprits, selling emote packs for $12 that were supposedly originally $24 and don't even have new emotes. They just had new thumbnail pictures. That's all. Really, really trashy looking stuff. In Path of Exile, damn, some of them are cool. You have glowing divine robes, demonic wings, pets, portals, effects, all of which look fantastic and can make the player feel unbelievably badass. But now the negative. This shit is way too damned expensive in some cases. Some of the really cool stuff can run you $20 or even up to $30 or more for a single cosmetic item. But it is important to remember that the game is free. This isn't tacked onto a $60 price tag that you must pay before even being able to see if the game is right for you. The game does have loot boxes, which I strongly disagree with, but in the same breath, there is a story that circulated somewhat recently regarding a Path of Exile player who actually called up Grinding Gear Games and specifically asked if she could have the loot boxes disabled, since she had a gambling addiction but still loved the game and wished to play. Grinding Gear Games worked with her and set up a system wherein the crates were disabled for her specifically until a preset date, but none of this would affect her ability to play and continue to enjoy the game. So while I disagree with the rudimentary concept of loot boxes, it's good to see that the developer knows full well what they are and is willing to work with players that need to avoid them. Would EA or Bethesda or Activision do that? Make your own determination, but I sincerely doubt it. They are also quite diligent about running sales, and since stash space is another component of the game that is tied to microtransaction purchases, this is good to see since when a sale occurs, the price is heavily discounted and makes it easier for players to access the tools wherein to improve their quality of life. No purchases are ever actually integral to enjoying the game, but I'll level with you right now, complete honesty. A couple good stash tabs like currency and maps and stuff like that, utility things, if you get heavily into the game, they will do wonders and you absolutely want them. The thing is, to get to a point where you even start to really want and need them, you will have to have already played dozens of hours, at least. So, is it bad to spend $10 or $20 on a game and get hundreds of hours out of it? That's up to the individual. Overall, with the new Synthesis League, Path of Exile has yet again added and improved its vast selection of skill gems, rebalanced its passive tree, which has been ever expanding and evolving over the years, added more content, new activities, and new material with innovative construction and a level of diligence and care that is just missing for the most part from the rest of the industry. In the world of ARPGs, that's action role-playing games, there are not really many competitors. You have Path of Exile, another game like Grim Dawn, for example, which is amazing in its own right, but cannot come even close to the scope and amount of content within Path of Exile. And then you have Diablo, and as many are aware, with Blizzard's obvious focus on mobile gaming, hence Diablo Immortal, Diablo 3 has inevitably suffered and lacks the continuous updates and treatment that is needed to truly capture a player base over an extended period of time. There are other competitors on the scene as well, but a lot of them are maybe turn-based or smaller projects that don't have a massive new batch of material every 3 months or so. So when it comes right down to it, Path of Exile is pretty much on its own level. The idea of a safe purchase is one that I think about a lot, since so many games that come out nowadays are a bait and switch or straight up deceptive marketing lie. How confident can we be when purchasing and playing a game? The sad truth is not very confident, especially in the AAA space. But with Path of Exile and each new consecutive league, and also right now for Synthesis in particular, players can actually be very confident in the game and what they will be getting. It's free, so no risk of an initial wasted purchase, and it also has one of the best track records in the entire industry. In 3 months, I will probably be revisiting yet again to discuss its newest league, and with their long-term and growing success, it stands as a testament to what the games as a service model is likely intended to be, but fails to live up to the majority of the time in other titles. That's pretty much it. Honestly, Synthesis isn't my favorite league, but that's because they have set the bar so high for themselves time and time again. Despite not being my personal all-time favorite league, however, it still has a massive amount of new content and is well worth checking out. My best advice, though, is to spend a bit of time researching the game first. Look up a loot filter, check out the wiki, watch some build guides, maybe find a couple trading platforms, anything like that, and various other beginner info, because it will help you overcome the relatively high barrier of entry a little bit quicker, and subsequently unlock what could amount to thousands of hours of non-stop content. But yeah, enough for today. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. We have various different social communities, some merchandise, and some other stuff too. But that's it. I'll cut it there and I'll stop rambling. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.